So, Channel 4 have exclusively tonight revealed a covert recording from 2013 between Second Sight forensic accountants who were employed to produce the Second Sight report and subsequently dismissed by the Post Office, and discussions between them and the Post Office, including senior levels of management, discussing what they have found. And what they have found is what the Sub-postmasters always thought. Don't forget, prosecutions continued for another 6 years, and really the contents of this conversation are explosive and confirm a lot of suspicions that a lot of people have held for so long. Let's analyse what has been said by those involved and who knew what at what time in 2013 across the Post Office and Fujitsu. Let's jump into the covert recordings.
It's more than one email. We've got sort of other emails that talk about the Bracknell function accessing live data, making changes to the system, not in real time, but it says something from memory along the lines of, and this will be corrected overnight, or we'll make these adjustments in the overnight run.
So we're not talking here about a single incident, we're talking about multiple incidents here, and whilst not happening in real time remote access, we are talking about near real time remote access. I can make a change in an afternoon and it'll reflect on a Sub-postmasters Horizon system in the course of the night, which arguably would make it even harder for them to notice any changes.
So just to bring you up to speed where I am, I did ask Fujitsu to be actually come clean. And apparently there is a process where, there is a technical avenue where you can technically do some form of adjustment.
So there, it's seems like these words are almost hard to get out. Technically, they can make an adjustment. Well, they either can or they can't, and it sounds like this individual at the Post Office certainly knows they can, and he's obtained that information from Fujitsu, so they know they can. We already knew Second Sight knew and suspected. What is confirmed here, because they've been quite public and open about their involvement in the production of the report, that has been widely publicised.
But apparently it's very carefully monitored, controlled, audited type stuff.
And that is kind of seemingly making Simon Baker less worried about it when he's discussing this, an IT specialist at the Post Office. But the evidence that we've seen so far at the Post Office inquiry would imply quite the opposite, that far from it being carefully monitored, controlled and audited, that it's not audited at all, or certainly not audited accurately.
The impression I get from looking at the emails is, whilst, in theory there might be those sort of, controls and so on, that, they're the sort of controls that are in a procedures manual. There's no electronic lock, if I can put it that way. In other words, if somebody in Bracknell had a brainstorm and wanted to do something, they could just do it.
Wow. So, yeah, it's procedure that we don't do anything like this in an underhand way, but we're essentially relying on the goodwill of people. Well, when I say we, I'm obviously referring to the Post Office there. Ian Henderson from Second Sight is clearly trying to highlight some major issues. There's actually a process in place that says this shouldn't happen, but there's no process in place to stop it happening. And with such large companies dealing with this, Post Office and Fujitsu, you do need checks and balances. There are so many people with potential access to this system and influence over the processes from not only the technical side, but also the business.
Yeah, we sometimes refer to them as controls for those who wish to obey them.
Now, that is quite a stunning statement, isn't it? Controls for those who wish to obey them. Where have we seen previously procedures theoretically should have been followed, but are seemingly quite blatantly disregarded?
Whether they are shown as, a system adjustment, a journal, adjustment or whatever, or whether they are linked, and this would be the nightmare scenario, whether they are linked to an SPM RSID.
The nightmare scenario, we have heard this before. Is it auditable in the fact that somebody at Fujitsu changed something, changed some data in it, or does it look like the sub-postmaster? Don't forget, this is the same Horizon evidence that will be presented in the court case against the sub-postmaster to provide apparently conclusive proof that they are the perpetrator behind the crimes. That would be, as Henderson says, a nightmare scenario.
Yeah, that would be a nightmare.
And it certainly was a nightmare for the sub-postmasters.
The other factor for me is, was the sub-postmaster informed?
Yes, I concur that is a valid question to ask.
Yeah, and based on the email traffic that I've seen, there's nothing to indicate that he or she was informed.
No indication that the sub-postmaster was made aware. No way, no wonder they could not explain the allegations that were put to them based on Horizon shortfalls.
I am going to continue to dig around, I think, just for my own for my own benefit, and also I think I want to keep Olwyn and Susan informed of what I've come up with, because for them to be forearmed, I think, you know what's going on, because they are not aware of any of this, by the way.
Okay.
Because I've told them, I've just found out from Fujitsu they're looking at them, and their faces dropped.
Well, they're aware now at this point, aren't they? The net of people who are aware is growing. Will these people face recall to the Post Office Horizon IT inquiry based on this? I wonder.
And by the way, I mean, one of the key emails has Gareth Jenkins' name all over it. So it was absolutely clear that this was a widely understood capability within the system.
Gareth Jenkins' name is all over it. Gareth Jenkins, we know, has been called previously to the inquiry and has protested on his appearance. We are expecting him to potentially, as long as the issues that he has raised with the inquiry are resolved in time, to appear during phases 5 and 6, which are due to start on April the 9th. And certainly it feels a strong possibility that Counsel to the Post Office inquiry are going to ask questions about this.
Yeah. Well, Gareth is the one that told me yesterday, and he didn't make any effort to hide it.
One question that does come to mind is, why, or are there any references to these conversations or conversations like it in any of the evidence we've seen so far? We know, for example, we've seen a lot of emails involving Gareth Jenkins and others, but this certainly seems to come as a bombshell. There doesn't seem to have been any content alluding to the fact that conversations such as this were taking place, and who knew and at what levels of the business. But we've certainly got multiple departments, from legal, from IT, and from management at the Post Office aware of this, and we've certainly got Fujitsu aware of this, according to the Post Office, because they indeed are providing the answers that they are talking about at this moment in time.
I would say you've got to decide whether you wanted to know about this before the Arbuthnot meeting, and if she does know about it before the Arbuthnot meeting, you've got to make the decision whether she tells him about it.
This is so close to it's one of the issues at the heart of the complaint.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we pretty well have confirmed that, you know, that the capability that was alleged in some shape or form does appear to exist.
That is to confirm that one of the key claims the sub-postmasters are making at this time is confirmed, is known about, has been found by Second Sight, and the Post Office are being advised on it.
Well, we'll be in a very awkward position if we're trying to defend why we are concerned, you know, the whole issue about sort of Arbuthnot's main concern, how he would react. You know, we can't keep this stuff from him.
If we're asked a straight question, and you know, by frankly anybody, we've got to give a straight answer. And I think in relation to Vennells, someone needs to brief Paula.
And we know actually that, you know, in the end, the Second Sight forensic accountants were dismissed. Does this play any part in it? That we don't know at the moment. We can suspect.
I mean, we were discussing this bloody Bracknell issue. Are we right in thinking that Paula isn't aware of that?
So Bracknell, obviously, where the Fujitsu office was based in the drama Mr. Bates versus the Post Office, we saw union representatives visit that, and subsequently there being a denial until he found an email proving that he had been invited there, that the meeting ever took place, where he apparently saw Sub-postmasters' Real Horizon systems being interacted with.
Yeah, she's not aware of it, or no, she's not aware of it.
I think it's dangerous not to brief Paula.
Yeah, so do I. I would brief her on it.
So did that briefing ever take place? Would the post office and senior people involved in this situation hide such a thing from the chief executive of the organisation that they work for?
But what do we say, though?
I mean, how's it going to be, for example, if for all I know, Arbuthnot asks her a question about it tomorrow? She's going to be blindsided on it.
What we're getting, Susan, not to put too fine a point on it, is confirmation that the sort of facility that was described, or that the sort of capability that was described, does exist.
And the lack of transparency from Fujitsu and the post office, I mean, never mind publicly, but to the sub-postmasters and their legal teams, is laid bare, and despite that, they still manage to actually, even if they don't know it on the time, the sub-postmasters are bang on the money of what's happening. And it's only due to their strength, dedication, and commitment in continuing this case to prove their innocence that we have actually ended up where we are today. And they are still fighting for that truth and justice as ever more information about alleged misconduct continues to emerge day by day.